Good afternoon and welcome to Biased Me, a study of implicit bias, how psychology and biology affect our opinions and actions, presented by California Lawyers Association. We hope you enjoy the program and we thank you for joining us today. At this time, I will turn the program over to you, Claude. Please begin.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, my name's Claude Duclos. If you're in the LA area, that's where I grew up. I grew up right near Crenshaw Center there, Crenshaw and Vernon Avenue. I'm licensed in California and Colorado and Texas, and I come to you today with this non-background because I'm up in Maine this week for another event. Now, I want for you to know that when I created this program with several others and we took this out, it was only because we wanted to create a implicit bias program that wasn't scary, that didn't threaten people. It was really more about how your brain works and how we make decisions and how we can improve our decisions. So let me try to get started. And I know you'll have a good time understanding this. And so first of all, we're going to just talk about biology, the biology of how we make decisions, the definitions and the types of bias that might be attendant to us, confirmation bias, the backfire effect, which is a very interesting, effect when someone challenges your beliefs, information deficit and belief change, and how do we get people who, are just absolutely anchored on something to change their opinion. Recognizing manipulation techniques when we're being manipulated, astroturfing, and since fake grass is astroturf when they talk about a grassroots program, but it's fake grass, that's called astroturfing, and strategies for dealing with others, and of course strategies for making better decisions ourselves. So primer, the biology of how we make decisions. There is a reason that we feel this way. Now, implicit unconscious bias, our worldview. Factors which form our worldview could be, we have these biological factors, but then we have factors that form our worldview. How and when we were brought up, who brought us up, who socialized us during our formative years, our friendships then and now. My good old Italian grandfather always used to say, show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. And that was absolutely true. Our media influences, who do we trust for giving us information, and our individual experiences. If, for example, we got bitten by a dog badly on the leg or foot when we were a child, we might be scared of dogs our whole life. If we almost nearly drowned, or we had a sibling or a close friend that almost nearly drowned, we might be scared of water. So the truth of the matter is, biologically, though, we are hardwired to prefer people who look and sound like us and share similar interests. I always look at bias like this. Bias is a tool that was formed in our brains over hundreds of thousands of years. When we saw our friend get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, we developed a fear that would tell us, don't go by saber-toothed tigers, they will eat you. When an animal that didn't, what we were familiar with came up to our group when we were socialized, we would be scared of that animal. When a person from a different ethnic group would come, from a different tribe, we would be scared of that person. That was all for our self-protective mechanisms. So think of bias as a tool in your Batman toolkit, so when you start feeling this way, when you feel threatened or something, ask yourself, is this tool kicking in? I have to ask myself, is this tool kicking in, or do I actually have a reason to feel the way I'm feeling? By the way, I know if you have some questions, I'm happy to answer them, but this is a pretty full program. So I will give you at the end my email, and no matter how many questions you have, if I don't get to them, email me simply at Claude@LawPay. That's where I get all of my national, CLE email, and I do my absolute best to answer all the emails. Or if I mention a form that you don't have, I have tons of forms for lawyers, and I love hearing from my LawPay colleagues and lawyers throughout the country. Again, as I said, I'm licensed in California and Colorado and Texas. Most of my practice has been in Texas over these 46 years. So our experiences, though, result in naive realism. The way we see the world, we believe everybody sees that. And so when we see it one way, we think everyone does, and that the psychologists called naive realism. We see the real way. If someone doesn't agree with us, we conclude that they just have to be misinformed. They are simply uninformed, or they're biased against reality. We rarely in our lives consider that maybe we are the ones who are misinformed, because we've seen this through our own eyes, and that's our world. And that's the definition of naive realism. So let me talk about the decision making. Your frontal lobe presides over the reasoning, self-control, decision making, your social behavior, your cognitive, complex behavior, mathematical skills, personality, whether you're nice or you're mean or you're serious or you're, flippant, whatever. That's in your frontal brain. So you make those decisions up there. But what really controls us is this limbic cortex, the lizard brain. Now, I like this drawing because it shows it looking like a lizard in green there. It looks like a lizard, and that job, that's our bully that keeps us safe. When we feel threatened, they kick it. It overrides anything that we're thinking. Our decisions rely, of course, on both sides, but let me give you a practical example. Let's say you're at a baseball game, and you're sitting along the right field line, and the batter hits a line drive foul ball right at you. Right now, that cognitive part of your brain's going, my goodness, there's a sphere heading in my direction. It has a certain amount of mass and speed. I wonder if it could do damage to me. But before you get 1/10 of a second into that, the limbic cortex kicks in and goes, Jack. And that's what you do. So that's what it's there for. It overrides other systems, and guys said, we don't have time to think about this stuff. We need to move to get out of the way of that sphere. So think about that. And that's why, as I'll talk about in a little bit, advertising is always geared towards your lizard brain. Fear, emotion, love, passion. There is a reason why Sam Elliott sells Ram tough trucks, with the idea that you'll be a tough cowboy like Sam Elliott if you buy that truck. And there's a reason, and then there's a reason why certain people don't sell things. There's a reason, for example, that Subaru appeals to those ads that you see where they buy the Subaru and there's a horrific accident, but their family is safe because they bought the Subaru. In other words, if you don't buy a Subaru, your family will die. So it's all about that. We don't appeal to people by talking about the transmission or how many, micro calculations a computer makes. We talk about love. There's the reason you buy that beautiful Lexus, because there's going to be a beautiful person, a man or woman, sitting by your side, because that's what always accompanies buying a luxury car. Passion. All right, the psychology of decision making. Here's our tools. Perception, how we perceive reality. What color is the sky in our world? And believe it, we cannot believe that it's anything but the color that we see. We might be identifying a different color as blue than they see in their world. And that it really is true. And there's so many studies. Okay, attitude. What sort of people make us scared or guarded? What sort of people will be naturally friendly toward? What attributes are we drawn to in people? I mean, are we drawn to people who are physically good looking? Are they athletic? Would you rather hang out with jocks, whether they're male or female, than with, eggheads who read lots of books? What type of people do we decide should be part of our world? And listening skills. Do we actively learn to listen to what certain people say, right? Or do we engage in micro inequities? I don't need to listen to that person because I know that person is of a different, political persuasion, and there's nothing that person ever could tell me that I would find useful. So now, of course, the world is complex, and we don't have, like I talked about the decision when that foul ball's coming at your head, we don't have enough time to make decisions by analysis. So we rely on these range of cognitive mechanism to cope with decisions, unknown environments. For example, these mental shortcuts are called heuristical decisions. Let's say, for example, if I were a live audience, I'd pick somebody out of the front row. I'll say, Mary, here, I want you to answer this question as quickly as you can. That you found out your car has been destroyed. You have 3 hours to acquire another car. What are you going to buy? 99% of the time, unless Mary is actually in the market to buy a new car and she's considering others, she's going to say, I want a Toyota Camry. And I'll say, it's because you drive a Toyota Camry, don't you? Yes. In other words, I have an iPhone here. If my iPhone breaks, I don't want to learn how to use, an Android phone. I'm just going to go buy a new iPhone because I already know how to use that. So quick decisions, we usually will get the same product that we already have. And that's specifically like when somebody said, well, I'm going to buy a new Ford, F-150. And I said, do you drive one? Yeah, I do, and I like it. So we use heuristical decisions. Let's say you're going out to lunch at the Cheesecake Factory, one of these restaurants that has a 50-page menu. You don't have time to look at 50 pages, so you'll go, do you have a tuna sandwich? Bring me a tuna sandwich and iced tea, something like that. You make a heuristical decision because we do not have, like I said, relying on a brand name over the products, So let's see then what else we have. Unconscious bias, just like many. Affinity bias, we like people similar to us, or we think one gender is better. Women are going to be better at being tailors. Men are going to be better at being engineers. That's where our bias is. In group, we perceive similar people like us in a more positive light. The halo effect. We said, look, yeah, well, he's bad. Well, we say that with certain politicians. Well, I like his policies. I don't like what he's done, but I like his policies. That's the halo effect, right? Projection bias, assuming everybody thinks like us. Confirmation, only look at the information which confirms. And this is what lawyers do all the time. Look, if we have and we'll talk about this in a second, when you have a certain theory about what you should do in pursuing relief in a certain type of case, and you don't want to be talked out of it, you won't talk to anybody about it because you want to use that theory. And so you only look at the good attributes of using that theory. Value attribution bias, in imbuing a person with the initial perceived value. You see a tall, handsome African-American man, you go, oh, I'll bet he plays basketball. Or you see, somebody with wild hair and disheveled, oh, I bet he's a scientist like, Albert Einstein. The Joshua Bell experiment. Joshua Bell, many of you know who like classical music, is one of the, finest, I used to say finest young violinists, but he's not so young anymore. But he's a wonderful, wonderful violinist. I've heard him play many times. I grew up in a very, classical music related family. So I've heard him play. Now, he did what they are calling the Joshua Bell experiment, although it was actually done in 1933, first time. And that is, he had played a big concert in Boston, packed house, and now the next day he's in New York, and he goes down to the subway, and he puts on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and a baseball cap, and he's got his Stradivarius violin, and he's playing one of the most complex, and he's a panhandling now. He's playing one of the most complex Bach pieces. And people just walking by, maybe tossing, oh, he's pretty good, give him a quarter, something like that. Not realizing that's Joshua Bell. You're listening to one of the finest violinists in the world. You know who was really fascinated with Joshua Bell? Children. They were mesmerized by his playing and how great he was. But if you don't expect to see Joshua Bell or one of the world's greatest violinists in the subway, you will not pay any attention to them. Now, I say they call it the Joshua Bell, but there was in 1933, they did the same experiment with the same result. If you don't expect to see the star down there, you don't pay any attention to them. Now, the problem with our making heuristic decisions, they rely on result in significant biases. So this is how we frame the problem in our own mind will determine outcome. And then how we frame the problem in others' minds. So let's talk about your mind first. If we think, let's do this. Let's say you're going to trial, and the other side has already filed a motion to exclude your expert witness, a Daubert motion. But the judge does what the judges always do. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let the witness testify, and I'll decide later whether the jury can do it. Well, you know that there's going to be a motion to disqualify your witness. So you're at trial. Everything's going great. Your evidence is coming in great. The jury loves you. Judge loves you. And it comes time to put on that witness. You're going to think, do I really need that witness? If not, because I don't want to inject error in the case by putting on a witness that ultimately a court of appeals will say I shouldn't put on. Now, if we think we're losing, we are definitely going to put on that witness, and we're going to put on that witness's brother, and we're going to put on as many as we can, because we might want to inject error if we think we're losing. So we are risk averse when we think we're winning, but we're risk takers when we think we're losing. And that's carries over to gambling. You know, you see, well, look, I one more roll, just give me a little more money, I'll get all this money back. So we take more risks when we do. But if you do a good roll on the roulette wheel and you win a bunch of money, you might say, I'm done. I don't want to take any more risks because I beat everything I thought I was going to get this weekend. All right, but let's talk about framing the problems in others' mind. To show you, this is what I mean, that lawyers can affect outcome by careful selection of the words they use. Here's what it was. It's the famous car crash video. They showed a video of two cars crashing at an intersection, right? And they would had groups of 7, and they would say, all right, there's no right or wrong answer. We want your whole group to look at the video and tell us how fast you think the cars were going when they crashed. Then with new groups, they started softening the verb when they collided. And then the last group got, how fast were the cars going when the bumpers touched? That's quite different from saying crashing, isn't it? So, and it worked. When they were crashing, they were going 29 miles an hour. When the bumpers touched, they were only going 19 miles an hour. You can affect outcomes with the right combination of words to describe the situation. The 7 steps for effective decision making. I only put this in because it reminded me of all these charts I used to see when I was in the Army 50 years ago about decision making. We got to do this. Number 1, identify the decision, gather information, identify what alternatives do I have from this decision, weigh the evidence, choose the alternative, implement it, take action. But number 7 is always review the decision. Is that the right decision? Because you don't want to have to, do that same decision later. I heard a great quote, which I really like a lot. It said, if you don't do it correctly the first time, what makes you think you're going to have time to do it correctly the second time? All right, so why don't we make great decisions? Too much information, but too much time, so we make an educated guess. Emotion, we use our lizard brain instead of thoughtful analysis. No, we know that this is going to be great. I just know it. I just feel it in my gut. Well, that's magical thinking. We shouldn't be in that. Epistemic closure, that's when we refuse to accept information at all, regardless of the validity, when it conflicts with your personal belief on that. For example, this is clearly exaggerated, but let's say it's really important to this person that 4 and 4 equals 11. It's important to him for a religious reason, or for a family reason, or for his life region. My life will be meaningless if 4 and 4 isn't 11. So you, being a good person, say, well, I'll tell you what, I think it's 8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over with 11 tennis balls, and we're going to count 4 and 4 and see what we come up to. Now that person actually knows that 4 and 4 isn't 11, so he's going to decline. No, you can't sway me with that that's trickery. I'm not going to listen to it, because they really need for 4 and 4 to be 11. So that's called epistemic closure. Like, screw it. You're not going to make me listen to evidence that I'm wrong, because clearly I know. Misusing information, we pay more information than easily available information. Self-serving bias, we pay more attention to anything that shows my position favorably. And you get so hooked on it that you completely lose any perspective that you could be wrong. And confirmation bias supports our already established point of view. And worse yet, we tend to surround ourselves with people who have the similar viewpoints. And of course, we are burdened by our own ignorance. This is my favorite part. It's the famous Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, this is something rather new compared to how long psychology has been in existence. In 1999, David Dunning, Justin Kruger, I think it was the University of Pennsylvania, created a general knowledge test, right? General knowledge, and asked the test taker. So they give it to a bunch of undergrads, and it's 100 questions. They get 1 point per question. So as they were leaving, say, okay, how do you think you did? Give me. And the smartest kids in the class would say, I think I did pretty good, 85, 90. I didn't really think it was all that. And shall we say the less talented would say, I think I did pretty good, 85, 90, Why? Because their knowledge base is this big and everything has to fit into it. So when they would tell those kids, You got a 37. I said, absolutely wrong. That it absolutely can't be. I can't have gotten a 37. I'm a brilliant person. And so what it says is, people of low ability and low knowledge regularly overestimate their performance. They say they're great, right? The cognitive bias of illusory superiority comes from their lack of self-awareness that they don't know shit. So, this reminds me of a particular politician whose name I will not mention, who said, elect me and I'll figure out national health care in 6 months. I'll have it fixed in 6 months. 6 months later, this politician is standing in front of a podium saying, who knew that healthcare could be so complex? And we're all looking at him going, fucking everybody, except you. And Confucius said, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. And Shakespeare said, the fool doth think he is wise, but the wise man knows himself to be a fool. All right, so which leads us to make biased decisions. All of the above result in the main problems with judging. We tend to be unduly optimistic about estimates and filter out uncertainty and we hesitate to reevaluate new information. You've heard somebody, whether it was a coach, a drill sergeant, or somebody say, well, do it my way. I may not be right, but I'm never in doubt. Yeah, don't listen to those people. Explicit bias, of course, showing a conscious decision to sow bias for presidents, where implicit results from the attitudes of stereotypes that affect our understanding. Well, we know that certain people from certain countries are not going to be good drivers, or we know that they're going to lie to us, or they're not going to understand what we say. So we just make those without even realizing it. So how does it operate? And I don't have time to talk about all these, but selective attention. If you have a cast on your ankle, or a woman is pregnant, she will selectively find the other pregnant women in a crowd because she's looking for someone to, like, yeah, that woman's pregnant, but we're not going to know. We notice somebody or we have an injury, or we have something, we'll find other people that has that. Pattern recognition, we'll say, oh, because he did this, that will happen now, even though there's no connection between the two. We give them value out. Oh my gosh, he went to Harvard. He must be the smartest person in the world. An affinity bias. Oh, he was in my fraternity, or he was in my same group, or he was from my same neighborhood. He must be a good person. It's funny, you don't hang out with people to your neighborhood, but if you saw them in a restaurant in Budapest, Hungary, it's like all of a sudden they're your best friends because they're from your neighborhood. Anyway, there's all of these anchoring bias. That's where judges think, I have handled this type of trial. I know how to do this trial. So they anchor on a theory on how to try the case that is wrong. And it's our job to tell the judge, I know you think this is a 13B, I'm making up a number case, but it's not because of this. And so let me get through that so I can dissuade you from thinking that the decision to be made is A, it's going to be B and C in this case. And then engaging in microaggressions. There's 4 people from our company sitting down having lunch, and you say hi to 3 of them, but you don't say hi to the 4th, and they're sitting there going, well, what am I, chopped liver? Why? That's a microaggression. All right, let's go. All right, I'm trying. There you go. Now, this is fascinating. It's the Thomas Meyer legal memo. In 2014, with the help of lawyers, the psychologist named Aaron Reeves creates a research memo which contained 22 errors. This blows people's mind. There were spelling errors, grammar errors, technical writing, and then factual inconsistencies in it. 60 partners in New York from big firms were given that memo and told it was written by a 3rd-year associate lawyer named Thomas Meyer, who was a New York law graduate. And they went to rate it from 1 to poor, from 1 meaning poor to 5, excellent. Now, interestingly, there was no Thomas Meyer. All 60 of them got the same memo, but 30 of the partners were told that Thomas Meyer was black. 30 of them were told that Thomas Meyer was white. Black Thomas Meyer only got a 3.2. White Thomas Meyer received a 4.1. Now, the only difference was telling them that it was a black lawyer versus a white lawyer. And what did that lead them to do? Predictably, they actually caught fewer mistakes because they didn't look as hard at white Thomas Meyer. But when they heard that the black, they scanned it more closely. So I'm sure if you talk to all of them, they would swear, I am not biased. I'm most open-minded. I don't, but it's something there in their brain that I need to look at this more closely if an African-American lawyer did. Okay, confirmation bias. I want to feel comfortable. That's why I go to my favorite station and hear everything I want to hear. Give me a moment to find unbiased data that calls you and your idea stupid. And of course, we can. What is confirmation bias? The tendency to search or remember things in a way that supports a pre-existing belief, an expectation, or hypothesis. It's been observed and debated philosophically for hundreds of years. And indeed, Francis Bacon, 403 years ago, said this: the human understanding, one has adopted an opinion, draws all things else to support and agree with it. Now, interestingly, Francis Bacon, if you look into his history, he was the one who kept telling people that there's gold in them there hills in America, and kept saying, no, you need to send more expeditions, which all died, to America to find that gold, which we know is there because these people have written these fantastical books. So interestingly, what is the effect of confirmation bias? It creates polarization. And of course, we interpret events incorrectly. We lack empathy. And that's how you get rid of feeling bad, getting rid of empathy. We don't need to feel bad for these people who have nothing to live for, because they have nothing to live for and they shouldn't have crossed this border. Right. We resist change which conflicts with our worldview. Our inaccurate beliefs persist and are passed on. In one study I found, this is way back in 1935, some big Boston newspaper said that there was a new telescope on the tip of Africa that the British had funded, and it showed that there were actually, it was so good that it showed there were hairy people on the moon. And that there were beavers on the moon, and there were all these other things on the moon. And they asked people 15 years later, and of course it was all completely debunked because we've removed all the beavers from the moon since that time. But they still, to their dying day, they believe that stuff. And it's like this, our inaccurate beliefs persist. And I know what beliefs we have in America, and you poll those people, no, I don't care that there's been no evidence of that. I still believe it. So unless we rely on the scientific method, people develop a false confidence in their ability to judge situations. All right, attorney's confirmation bias. When we get an initial case in and we know what we're doing, so I know how to do this case. The strategy in this kind of case is do X. So we don't want to even consider anything else. Like jurors, attorneys unintentionally seek facts or evidence to support their assessment, and we dismiss clear, valuable data such as expert witness reports that the other side has that says we're wrong, because we want that to be true. My sort of litmus test on this kind of stuff is, if you don't want to talk about your case strategy with your lawyer friends, you probably know you're wrong and you don't want anybody to tell you that you're wrong. The other thing that I learned to do almost 20 years ago is I never picked a jury. And I've tried many jury cases without having lunch with a group of friends, non-lawyers, just telling them about my case. Oh my God, you learned so much about your case from your neighbors, from your friends who are just intelligent people. But wait a minute, but how come that didn't happen the month before? If this happened, well, then why did this? They will ask you questions that you can't answer about your case. You'll go back there just like, oh my God, I need to find out all this other data, because the jury is going to be thinking about this if I presented this case correctly. Preventing confirmation. Don't be quick to attach a theory or strategy. Your initial assessment should be about information gathering and maybe a gut feeling. And I believe this, you step away for a couple of days, and I always think I get my best ideas like at 4 in the morning, probably when I get 5.5 hours of sleep or so, and that old cache of information is cleaned out, and I wake up going, oh yeah, that's what I need to do. When new material arises, be objective about it. Remember, and tell your client about it too. Right. Remember that juries don't see the case like we see it. Lawyers are wired to think differently and assess facts differently. Be willing to accept a different opinion or criticism. Attack it from a different angle. Okay, if we can't prove this, how can we disprove that? Right. Reframing the value system. Oh, this is a great idea. This is a great true story. One of my friends from San Antonio, great lawyer. He does those big, huge 18-wheeler wrecks. He had a case where in the middle of the night, a truck had pulled over on the shoulder of the road to go to sleep. 4 in the morning, you know, a minivan full of family comes, and there is an exit to the highway after where the truck is parked, but the dad driver starts pulling off too early, doesn't see the truck on the side of the road, and bam, smashes. Well, every time they focus grouped it, nobody use, you know, fake juries anymore. They use focus groups, and they say every time they call it, well, he was parked on the shoulder of the road, they lost. The group said, no, it's legal to park on it. But there is another synonym for the shoulder of the road. It's called the emergency lane. The truck was parked in the emergency lanes. Throughout the trial, he kept saying this truck at night was parked in the emergency lane. And he ended up winning that trial. See, it's so important, the shoulder of the road versus the emergency lane. Consider alternative solutions. Engage your creative side of the brain. We need to, again, talk to your friends about this. If we don't retrain ourselves to think of things in a fresh manner, we're plugging in our preformed solutions, and it's lazy and dangerous. You know, there was the famous line from the movie Whiplash, which I just saw. He said, the 2 most dangerous words in America was good job. If, you know, good job isn't really good enough. So the backfire effect, that is an interesting, you know, thing, and that is if we attack someone's core belief, they believe it more strongly. So here's what I would do. If you were a live audience, I would pick somebody out of the audience, say, what's your favorite food? And it's usually one of, you know, like, oh, I love Italian food, or I love pizza, or I love, you know, barbecue, or I love Mexican food. No matter what food they say, I will attack it. Oh my God, barbecue? Do you have any idea how many calories of saturated fat what that's doing? It should come with a stent to put in your heart. That's horrible for you. And so I say, now, does that make you want to have barbecue any less? No, it makes me want to have it now, because you're attacking it. When you give them contradictory evidence, their beliefs get stronger. The confidence in the correctness of their position increases, because you don't want that information to believe. You will fight against it. The degree which such rationalization occurs upon several things, but the significance of the challenge belief appears to be crucial. Something that relates to your social identity, your religious identity, that you are not going to listen to contrary evidence. Now, the information deficit model is our Pollyannish belief that we can change people's attitude just by showing them logic and truth. And here, let me show you on a piece of paper that 4 and 4 is 11. No, the theory is when we have a friend who misperceives something, it's just due to a lack of knowledge. So if a nice person like me gives them that knowledge, all you need is more information to change their view. No. If that person has a misperception, that's different from ignorance. Misperceptions are held with a high degree of certainty, and people often consider themselves to be well informed about the facts and questions. More importantly, on high profile issues, the misinformed really know that they're wrong. But it's so important to their identity. It's like these people who, no matter how much information you give them on a particular political thing, no, you can't. I've got to say this. I've got to believe this, or my party will disown me. All right. Resistance to belief change correlates with act in your insular cortex and amygdala. Now, remember, that amygdala is got to make you feel better. Its job. So that insular cortex, it monitors your internal state, it generates emotions and feelings. It's activated if you show those scans by perceptions of threat, uncertainty, anxiety. It lights up when you're viewing faces of opposing political candidates. It's especially sensitive to fearful and threatening stimuli and plays an important role in social judgments. You know, and there's, if you don't want to remember, boy, I have so many stories of interviewing clients who admitted, oh, yes, I did this wrong. But a year later, I didn't do wrong. It was the other person that did it, because that's the amygdala's job, is to make you feel better about yourself. And you might have admitted once in front of somebody that was your fault, but actually the studies show, and I think I will have that slide, that you feel better about yourself if you persist with the lie that you know is a lie. You feel more empowered. All right. It's behavioral psychologists. Now, I quote these three guys, John Watson, Leon Festinger, and Claude Terrapille, because they all went to work for the advertising industry. John Watson, love, fear, and rage appeal to consumers' fears, insecurities, and anxieties to make them purchase product, right? Leon Festinger, you can't change convictions with disagreement, facts, figures, or logic. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Festinger. And Claude Terrapille, who has a lovely head of hair, says, I don't care what you're going to tell me intellectually. I don't care. Give me the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain always wins. Now, Leon Festinger, if you'll remember, there was a group around 1982 who believed that on August 8th of that year, the big mothership was going to take them all up into, to Mars or wherever they're going to go. And they believed so intently that they sold everything. Well, Leon Festinger made friends with these people and followed them around, went to their meetings and everything, and they were giving away all their things. And he thought, well, I'm going to interview them after they don't get, taken up into the mothership in the rapture. So he did. And he said, well, listen, you've been saying this and you're certain about this, but it didn't happen. Do you feel like you've been duped by these people that told you that? He said, almost to a man. They said, no, we just miscalculated. It's still going to happen. They're so invested in that they can't change it, even though they realize they've just been duped into that. And so that's where he says you can't change their convictions. If that's a conviction with disagreement, facts, figures, or logic. All right. Politicized belief. Now, political misperceptions are rooted in directionally motivated. They want the country to go this way, which limits the effectiveness of corrective information. By the way, at the end of this, I give you all of the resources I use to put this together. Directionally motivated reasoning is based upon our protected values, perceived strongly head. I mean, think about discrimination. Think about non-integration. Well, you can't let those people live in the neighborhood because they'll ruin the neighborhood. Our values is to not do this. So we had to come up with these BS reasons why you couldn't have integration. Belief perseverance. Once a piece of information is encoded in your memory, it can be difficult to eliminate. So what's the tipping point? Now, I don't know how they got to 14%, but they said, but if you can talk somebody into listening to more information, when 14% of the information challenges a person's belief, the person starts to engage in active learning. But when the information challenging hits 30%, they start to change their view. But most people, like I said, epistemically, they won't get there because I don't want to hear those facts. I need to believe this. I need to believe that my girlfriend is loyal to me. I need to believe that my teacher is not a bad person who would do this to other students. So we engage in active information avoidance. We shun useful information, even though we know it's useful, we know how to get it, and it's easy to get, or even costs you not to get it. So, but how do we get from Walter Cronkite, who signed off, I guess they said he signed off 40 years ago in 1983, to people yelling at each other? Well, I think it's all news. Manipulation of news, media, and memory. It's not that I lack the facts. I simply don't like the facts. Now, if you're a big Fox News watcher, I have one slide here that I'll warn you so you can shut your eyes. A manipulation technique, a primer. Deliberate fear mongering. Yes. Oh, if these people come across the border, they're all rapists and murderers. Projection, attributing your own bad tendency. Well, sure, we did this, but they've done that and they're worse than we are. False dichotomies, saying you either have to be with us or against us. No, I think there are people on both sides of everything that have some good ideas that we ought to be considering. Ad nauseum, beating that dead horse with the same excuse, same argument. Oh gosh, how many times we have to hear about so-and-so's emails. Cognitive dissonance, of espousing two contrary beliefs. Christianity should be the absolute religion. I'm Catholic, so I know. Should be the religion of the country, but it's okay to put kids in cages. That's sort of a cognitive dissonance. And the created enemy, the way to avoid guilt and shame for heinous acts, that was our enemy. They deserved everything bad they got. Takeaways, we know this. If you get people to be fearful and angry, you got them. Once the target is afraid and angry, logic and facts won't change their mind. And this is your Fox News slide. 1996, Rupert Murdoch hires Roger Ailes, a political advisor to head Fox. And Ailes defined Fox News' target audience, per his assistant, Tobin Smith, as white guys in mostly red state counties who sit on the couch with a remote in their hand all day and night. And more importantly, the truth is whatever people will believe. If we tell our audience what they want to hear, they'll never change the station. Brilliant. Successful. That's exactly right. So he says you need to scare the SH out of the audience. All right, moving on. So what do we have? These are hurdles to understanding. Number one, new age manipulation, astroturfing. Astroturfing is fake grass, so is fake grassroots, a carefully constructed narrative. You send out 500, tweets made through bots in Russia saying, oh, this is, blah, 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 and everybody starts believing it's fake grassroots support. Using social media to create a false impression of widespread and then used extensively by a range of special issues, not just political, but corporate, like, oh, I want everybody to believe that this car is the best car. So, all right, then the rising danger of group identities, which overcome our own free will and good habits. Now, this is not a new thing. The Rattlers versus the Eagles, this is a 1955 experiment. 24 boys that were from Oklahoma City, recruited through summer camp to learn activities to create group cohesion. And of course, they were separated into two groups, and they didn't even know that the other group was there for 2 weeks. They learn all this group stuff and they name themselves. It's a given name. So that's where the Rattlers, one group named themselves the Rattlers and the other one named themselves the Eagles. But then after 2 weeks, after getting hardened into their group identity as a Rattler or an Eagle, they were put into competition. And the results were posted each day, and the winners awarded prizes, and the losers were made fun of. It turned ugly. The teams insulted, fist fights broke out, they vandalized. In other words, their group identity became more important than their self-identity, including demonization of anyone outside the group. By the way, that same defense has been used by 1,000 people about the January 6th event. I just went along with the group. That's not me. I just got swept up to it. That's the danger of group identities. Hurdle to changing mind number 3, the illusion of explanatory depth. Now, this is actually a helpful thing. What we talked about, Leon Rosenblatt and FC Kyle, we overestimate the depth of our knowledge. So instead of saying, do you believe that toilets hurt? Yes, you say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 7, how well do you think you understand how, I'll just make it up, a toilet works? And they go, oh, I think it's 6. All right, now explain to us how a toilet works. And they go, well, I know you push the handle and stuff goes away, but I'm really not sure. Same thing if you ask them about, monetary policy or interest policy or the Fed, or say, yes, I'm all in favor of this. So how does it work? They realize, I don't know. And it softens people and it depolarizes people to realize, I really don't know what the policy should be on immigration. All right. But when you simply say, go back, give reasons to support the policy, it doesn't change their hubris. And then, of course, now we have new evidence, new conspiracism. That's the no evidence. And that is classic conspiracies result from evidence. Yes, there were the people on the grassy knoll. There were 3 sticks that looked like rifles coming up. We have some evidence there was oil on the ground over on this side, meaning the truck should have been there. But now we just say the conspiracy itself exists because we say it over and over and over and over. We tease out secret machinations. The perfect example is back in 1992, the UN came up with what they called Project 21, which was to try to get all the countries on board to understand we're going to have to slow down global warming. We're going to have to start doing this. Well, now they've turned that. Newt Gingrich or somebody used it in a speech, and all of a sudden it became like, dun, 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 dun. Project 21 is for world domination. All these things, they have a meaning that never was intended by all of that. So, but the problem with the new evidence conspiracy, we don't need evidence. There's no dots to connect. It imposes its own reality simply by repeating it. And what happens when you ask them, okay, so what's your evidence for this conspiracy? They go, oh, if you're challenging my evidence, you're part of the conspiracy. It's a self-sealing belief. You don't need any evidence. It's self-sealing, and anybody who challenges it, like we talk about, voter fraud. We looked at the whole thing of how many voters were actually prosecuted we have all these new things, and over 1 billion ballots, there were 14 prosecutions. Doesn't sound like it's that big a problem, but all right. Self-sealing belief, resilience and decision making. So what is mental balance? I'm going to go through this very quickly. Got about 10 more minutes here, and then I want to open it up for some questions. Psychological state of someone who's functioning on a satisfactory, I can handle this, I have to handle this. How many times, lawyers, have you gotten up in the morning and said, I don't want to work on the Jones case, but I have to. Today is the day I have to do this. Mental balance means I will do this whether I really want to at all. If you're feeling overwhelmed, however, try to use the stop technique. There's times when we are, and you just need to put it down, take a breath, right? T is take a breath, take several deep breaths and focus on your breathing. It really does settle your thing. Observe what's going on in your body. Are you sweating? Are your hands sweating? Are you tense? Relax your neck. And then P is plan and proceed. Okay, thinking about this. And I can't tell you how many times I have used this, and it does work when I'm really stressed out going to trial, saying, okay, wait a minute. What is it I have to actually decide? Think about the decision. Actually, that was in Jeffrey Tubin's book, The Nine, about the Supreme Court. If you haven't read it, the book's probably almost, let's see, it's about 14 years old. He loves Supreme Court. And he talks about how Sandra Day O'Connor was sort of the school marm, the first woman on, and she would say, look, we don't have to reverse this whole case. We only have to make this decision. She would focus everybody on this part of the statute that's under attack. So think about what you have to do. And then talk to somebody, debriefing is telling someone about what's happened, going over an experience or set of actions to achieve some sort of order or meaning. That's why dynamic psychotherapy works, because you get to talk to it. Healing begins when people think they're being listened to. Try connecting, help others. And when you help others, it really helps you feel better about yourself. Did you know you can conquer your own stress? In a 30,000 person study on the effect of stress over 10 years on the rate of death, people who believed they had a stressful year and that the stress was harmful had a 43% higher risk of death than those didn't. But a related study showed that the effect of stress on death rate was completely offset when you're regularly helping others. Great idea. So what can we do? Changing others' minds. I know you're thinking, okay, let's get to the crux of this. So this guy believes that 4 and 4 is 11. How do I get him to believe that 4 and 4 is 8? Well, then the famous French philosopher, inventor and physicist, Blaise Pascal, who died at the ripe old age of 39, he created what we consider decision theory. To change another's mind, he said, you must first find agreement with that person. Find something that you agree on. Yes, and I have been, when somebody has said, well, what about this? I will say, all right, well, do you believe that it's important for us to tell the truth? Let's start with that basic. Yes, I do. Okay, well, are you open to more information? You must help that person discover the answer on his own rather than handing it to, look, you idiot, here's the answer. No, so, well, what about this? Well, if this were true, what else do you think would follow from that? To effectively persuade someone to change their mind, lead them to discover the counterpoint of their own accord. I love that quote. So what can we do? First of all, we need to get the story. When we're telling a story, let's not gossip. Get our story right for the first time. If we have to relay information we're not sure about, say that. I have been told, but I don't know this is true, that this is what happened there. I'm trying to get better information. Once you put misinformation out there, it's impossible to erase it. Don't spread gossip. That's what that book was about. People are saying, no. When you start a sentence with that, people aren't saying, you're saying it. People are saying, I built the greatest building on Riverside Drive ever. No, you're saying that. People saying I was the greatest, such and such in the world. No, people aren't saying, you're saying that. And did you see that happen? Use credible sources. Don't give credence to the fringe. That's the hardest thing in America to do to people who get their news off, Facebook. Don't give credence to the fringe. Consider others' perspective. The other thing that we need to do is present positive information. 80% of people are subject to the optimism bias. We want to believe that our lives are going to be better, that our children's lives are going to be better. Most of those who are not optimistically biased actually suffer from depression. So those with an optimistic bias store positive information better by the frontal lobe. And people will change their beliefs more when presented with good and positive information. Stress destroys that optimism bias. Stress people learn from negative information. Let me give you an example of this. Remember, and I'm just reading a study on this, where that guy came out with a study that said, well, when you have these vaccines, children would get autism. And of course, it's been completely debunked, and the Lancet and everything else had to do that. And he lost his medical license, but still people believe that. So you have to say positively, rather than saying vaccinations do not cause autism, you say vaccinations promote childhood health. Vaccinations indeed promote childhood health. Because if you're optimistically biased and you hear the phrase, vaccinations do not cause autism, you have a tendency over time to drop out that adverb of negation, not. And you just remember the two concepts, vaccinations, autism, rather than it's they do not cause. Vaccinations promote positive childhood health. Moral reframing, make your position compatible with your audiences. Review partisan clues like liberal value, benevolence, nurturance, equality, social justice, conservative values, group loyalty, authority, protection, liberty. So they asked this conservative group about, there was a legacy forest that was trying to be protected up in northwestern state of Washington. And so you could ask the question two ways. Do you think, though they asked a conservative group, do you think that those tree huggers ought to be able to stop loggers from cutting down this wood? No. Then they put it a different way. This is the last, pure, pristine forest in America. Is it important to our national history to keep that? Yes, absolutely. So morally reframing the question can help you get the outcome. When presenting facts, aggregate data. Information that's easy to process is more likely to be accepted. Graphing, using graphs, saying, look, here's how many people do it versus how many people don't do it. Summary perceptions of political accuracy are more than using negative just so. Don't editorialize if you can. Lawyers as leaders, and we are, I think, and I'll tell you again, we are the most important profession in America right now. We have to challenge beliefs that are dangerous to us. Recognize the social value of admitting when we're wrong and changing people's minds. Make it uncomfortable for people to spread gossip and lies in your presence. I don't know what that person thought. I was in the American National History Museum, the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and I heard a dad telling a group of boys something that was a complete wrong fact. But here's these, Boy Scouts, these, Cub Scouts in their uniforms, and he was telling him a fact about a president which was completely blotto wrong. And I said, sir, I don't know where you heard that. That's completely inaccurate, and it's been debunked a bunch of times. And I said it loud enough for the kids to hear me, and he was a little shocked. I just turned and walked away. The point is that make sure everybody knows the importance of a free press and an independent judiciary. We need lawyers, I think, more than ever right now. So what can you do to make a difference? Remember what Leon Festinger says, you can't change convictions with disagreement, facts, figures, and logic. So take the high road, stay informed, don't give an opinion on a subject unless you're required to, and then make sure that you try to find out the facts before you do that. Get your story right. Don't give credence to these fringe people. Don't use gossip or hearsay relating facts, and reframe issues to be compatible with the important beliefs of the audience. Handle your decisions in a way that minimizes bias. Be aware of our own heuristic tendencies in making decisions. Accountability, the more serious decision, the more people will look into it. Get people, the reason the jury system works is because we make better decisions Somebody will bring into your group an idea, but wait a minute, what about this? What about that? What about this? Use diverse decision-making groups. And then you'll at least, even if you think that a person who has diversity is not right, you'll hear what other people think. And then you'll be better prepared to defend if you think there is a better outcome. Avoid those partisan cues if you can. Finally, what I want to do before I turn it over to the question is tell you, go to Project Implicit. In Project Implicit, run by Harvard, you can take any number of bias tests. You can do it on religion, you can do it on, gender equality, you could do it on, I took one that was on whether or not I thought men or women would make better engineers, or are they better at math? And it's very clever the way they do it, because you have to answer the questions very quickly. If you bog down, they'll go, well, no, you're trying to figure this out. Don't do that. Just answer the question. I was happy to say said I had no perceivable bias because of that, probably because the kids I grew up with, all the women were the smartest ones in my class all the way through. So I want you to think about this. I want you to feel free to email me, and I am now going to ask John if we have any questions. John? Hello? Hello?
All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this time, and I'm going to go ahead and pop that email into the little chat message for everybody so you can copy and paste that. Did you have anything else in closing before we take off?
I just wanted to tell you to all participate in your profession. Please get busy in whatever your local bar association is. Do good service, do good works. You have a magic thing in your pocket, and that's called a law license. You can make people's lives better. You can solve their problems. You can relieve their stress. And it's all because you are a lawyer and can do that. So I look forward to speaking to you guys again whenever you want it. And feel free to send me your comments at claude@lawpay.com. Thank you, John, and thank all the people and for attending this today.
All right, I would like to thank you, Claude, for a wonderful presentation, and I would also like to thank our attendees for joining us for Biased Me, a study of implicit bias, how psychology and biology affect our opinions and actions, presented by California Lawyers Association. This concludes today's program. Have a great day, and you may now disconnect.